Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Mr. Motto, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
So I want to just say we have some good news for rates because the bond went under 4% today. It's 398, and I gotta say rates are actually starting to drop pretty hard. We're looking at, depending upon credit scores, low sixes, high fives for conventional, and low to mid fives for government loans. So let's get those buyers off the fence and let them know it's really a good time to buy right now with these low rates. How long will it last? I don't know because 2 weeks ago the 10-year was over 425 and now it's under 4%. So the 10-year drops and rates drop. So let's get things moving. So really, really good news for bonds and really good news for rates today. So hopefully we get some
So
buyers moving.
if you're back from R4, raise your hand if you're on camera. All right. So we had a request. What was your biggest takeaways from R4? Anybody who attended? Not everybody at once.
I'll
Yeah.
go. I loved meeting, honestly, every lunch, every random people I met were Remax Select Group, and it was amazing. I mean, we've been with you guys, what, 6 weeks now, Rob?
Yep.
Um, and some of the smartest people I met were in, your Florida offices, Maryland, a lot of New Jersey. New Jersey, you guys are really smart. And the power sharing and networking that happens between the sessions. It was just fantastic meeting so many of you guys. And of course the AI stuff was good, but
Yeah.
I really enjoyed meeting a lot of you guys.
The AI stuff in that session was pretty crazy, right? And Mr. Dave, do you have anything you took away from the meeting,
There
the
were a
conference?
lot of there were a lot of really great things. I did really appreciate the AI and the integration with Bold Trail. We're get ready, guys. We're having some big changes come out with Bold Trail, and a lot of new technology through Remax. There was one particular speaker that I thought was really good. Actually, a couple of them were really great. But there was a lady there that spoke about word choice and communication. And I really, in particularly, got a lot out of that. And word choice and communication with your clients is so important as to how you speak with them, and it exudes your level of professionalism. So, and then also, the author for Atomic Habits was there. He gave a really good talk. I thought he was phenomenal. But I thought all of the guest speakers were actually very, very good. So, there's my
Yeah.
take.
And we had a lot of our select group doing sessions speaking. So at times we had two speaking at the same time. So if you spoke and I didn't attend, it was because I could only be at one place at a time. So my takeaway was that our leadership is really energetic, motivated. They're younger. They're looking to change the perspective that some of us longtime people have and refresh the brand. So that was my takeaway from the session. On top of what you all said in terms of networking and uh, I don't know if there's anything more granular that I could give you that I took away from it. So Tyler, anybody else have anything, any last things before we go on to the show? All right.
Rob, if I could offer up my 2 cents.
Sure.
Listening to the economist at the closing session, it's not that bad. Everything's going to be okay. Don't panic. I know we all look at rates and we're concerned about rates. The economy is so complicated and so many different factors come into rates going up, rates going down, T-bills, this and that. It's going to be okay. As long as we work, as long as we make the calls, go on the appointments, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. My takeaway from the entertaining economist, I'll call him that, was that nestled in his message there, and I don't know if you picked up on it, Bobby, was that we kind of have a obligation to communicate to our clients and our future clients, what it takes to buy a house, right? It's kind of that moral obligation piece that he was talking about. So that might have been my little nugget takeaway from the entertaining economist.
Yes, I would agree.
So before I get started, if anybody is a traveler, I'm going to put something in. I put it on the session here. If anybody likes free money, or if you're like a points person, there's a program which you can click through before you buy stuff called Rakuten, and it gives you points towards your mileage. So, and there's really no catch to it. So I put it into the document. I'm gonna put it into the chat as well if you want to sign up for it. You get $50 free if you have like an American Express card. It winds up, you can link it so that it gives you American Express points, which are probably double that. So that's my little tip for today before we get started. So they had at the final session, they had the perfect pitch, right? The perfect listing pitch. Who was at that? Anybody stay through the bitter end? Dave, what was your takeaway on that? I had a takeaway that I want to share after yours.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The premise of it is they had three agents get up and give their listing pitch for a special home, the home that the Brady Bunch grew up in. And so it was really interesting, in the different perspectives that the three different agents chose. One of the one of the agents actually had a guest speaker, and it was the youngest Brady girl. What her name?
Cindy Brady.
Cindy. Yeah, it escaped me there. As a guest speaker for why they should choose her as their agent. And I thought it was really great. It was interesting to see different perspectives of three different agents and how they would propose to get the listing for the same property. So
My takeaway was that every single one of our agents, if they rehearsed, they could be on par with all of those three finalists. That was my takeaway, because there was nothing that blew me away. They were all solid, but we should be intentional with the way that we have our conversation. And that's my takeaway. And I mean, I know it must have tested their nerves to be up there in front of a couple thousand people or more, but other than that, our great team can do that or do that better in our local markets, in my humble opinion. What do you think, Dave? You think you can get your group to, front line, top of the pack worthy?
absolutely, and I do agree with what you said there, Rob. Any agent that would put in the effort to do a pitch like that could do it. But the thing is, it's putting in the effort to do the pitch, to think about what they want the presentation to look like. And even the agent that brought in Cindy Brady, bring in your assets and resources. Who do you know that knows them that would vouch for you in a listing presentation? So, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, but preparation's the key.
So, calling it the perfect pitch almost, I mean, it kind of doesn't resonate with me, but you have to call it something, right? When you go on a listing appointment, and we need to be intentional. I think we need to be structured. When I'm invited or privileged to go on appointments, I think that, although every homeowner is unique and different, I think the process is more dependent upon how we manage the appointment as opposed to who the seller is. Because the sellers are basically, 98% of the time, Dave, they're all the same, right? They're just disguised as young, old, rich, poor, right? But they all have the same questions, they all have the same concerns, and they're looking for us to give them the solution, the path to get the process done correctly. When we were together at some of the events, hang on. When we were together at some of the events, I was talking with several of our 4 attendees, and I asked this question. Have you ever had a listing where you nailed the pricing correctly and you got 2 or 3 offers early on? And I'm going to ask anybody, what do you think the sellers almost always say in that case if you don't set the stage properly?
That you underpriced the property.
Yeah. They come and they say, hey, Lisa, should we have priced it a little bit more aggressively, right? And I will tell you that if you're in St. Louis, Monday and Tuesday, I don't know if Sandy got that email out yet, but we're going to have in your local office a meeting, and this is one of my passions to get out to our team is if you set the stage correctly, you will never have that conversation. I mean, never, because when you frame it that if you get 2 or 3 offers early, statistics show you're getting the best price. When they get multiple bids early on in the process, they don't come to you and say, hey, Lisa, did we underprice it? They realize that they've balanced it correctly, right? They got to the number where they need to be. And that takes us to the perfect pitch, right? How do we structure the listing appointment, right? A listing pitch is not a performance. It's a risk reduction conversation. All right. So it's not walking through a pre-canned presentation. In my opinion, it's not even talking about, my office is this, my history is this. It's about engaging it into a conversation and taking those attributes that a lot of times real estate agents are using as a crutch to say you should list with me because my office has top market share because I sold more houses in this area. I think the perfect pitch is how do you connect the outcome to the statistic or the data that you're presenting, right? Now, if anybody's from New Jersey and's been in the business more than 20 years, and you saw Weichert used to have this listing book. Anybody around long enough to remember those days? You can unmute yourself if you were.
Yes, I remember.
Yes.
It was about the size of a piece of luggage that you had to carry around with you.
Yes, and from people that came to us from Weichert, they said if they were going into a condo, they couldn't even open it up on the table.
Very true.
Okay, but that was the epitome of what I think we shouldn't be, right? That was, Marilyn, wasn't that like a show and tell?
Yes, it was.
Right? It talked about
Yeah.
Talked about how good Jim Weichert was, and talked about his gold services. It talked about a page about Marilyn Scafidi, right?
Yes.
But that it wasn't interactive. It was really, that was 80s or 70s or 90s, right? Now we need to go into a conversation about
We were
what
like
is that listing appointment
used car
like?
salesmen.
Yeah, who was that?
Tony.
Oh, Tony. Yeah. So, in New Jersey, the Weichert rings very, very well because a lot of us have either come from there or I haven't been there, but we've been exposed to people who've got their start there.
It was like a wallpaper book.
Yeah. So to be clear, that's what we don't want to do. Okay. What we want to do is we want to engage, ask questions. We want to reduce the risk. And if you have your camera on, by show of hands, do you think that when you put the customer's needs ahead of your needs, that the conversation's always easier? By show of hands, do you believe that? Right? And then when you take care of the customer, does that not make the experience or the process a little bit easier for us? Same show of hands. right? Because I think we maybe sometimes look at it backwards, right? And we say we want to get this price right so that it's easier to sell for our needs. But if we look at it through the lens of the consumer and we talk about why it's relevant for them to use a winning strategy, it makes the whole conversation easy. And is there anybody here, and this is where I want you to be honest, is there anyone here that can go out to an appointment and not be tied to the outcome? That's a hard question, but you go on the appointment and you run the plays that you know you need to run, and win, lose, or draw, you're comfortable. You're not worried about the outcome. Who's in that boat besides me? Because that's my boat. I see Gary. And this is the scenario. This is a scenario where, you know, if you don't get a bad listing, you're okay with it because you run the plays. But more times than not, the outcome will come will fall in our lap because we're putting the client first. Okay. I see Mark Feingold. We ran that play down in was it Marlboro, Mark? You want to unmute yourself for a half a second?
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay.
So I remember that I was so unattached from the outcome, and you know, Mark had spoke to somebody who on the phone was barking about price and fee, and we had a conversation. And as we're walking up the door, you know, my recollection is you came to me and said, "Hey, Rob, remember that if we have to go to 3.9, you know, you said we can do it." Do you remember that, Mark?
I do.
And do you remember what I told you?
No, tell me what you told me.
I said, but you're okay with 5 as well. And you look like this. Oh, he's gonna blow it. Is that possible to have that one down, Mark?
Yeah, that's fair recollection.
And did we do 3.9 or 5?
Did 5.
And did we do their price or our price?
We did our price.
And was that guy analytical?
Very much so. Yeah.
So anyway, it happens all the time, and you know, Mark and Mark did an excellent job, by the way, and they're big raving fans. But if we didn't have the right strategy, he would never have the opportunity. And if you listen to what they purported to say, right, we would have gone off our plan. Because honestly, you know, if you would have priced that another 100,000 higher, we would have been sitting with that, and that would have been bad for everybody. But we had the courage to press and educate and go head to head with the seller. So our listing appointment, it's not a presentation. It's a conversation. It's reducing the risk of the seller from mispricing it and building days on market, and we need to have the courage to do that. Some of the language that you might want to use is our goal is to select a price that's the safest choice for you to have the best possible outcome. Sellers don't want stories and hype. They want results and certainty. I think psychology is probably psychology and communication is probably as important as your resume of prior success. It's certainly, in my opinion, more important than a canned presentation. Okay. When you have a process and you can communicate well, you then take the position of an authority as opposed to a salesperson, if that makes any sense. Right? If you have clarity of how the process goes down, that builds trust. Right? one way of demonstrating that, which I could talk about, is, have you ever been in a listing appointment, and at some point you feel like you've gotten you have the rapport, you've built the trust, and then you just go, hey, the next step is we need to decide what day we launch the listing, right? And you don't have to go into all the particular details because it's kind of given. And sometimes we backtrack and we make the process a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. Is there anybody, and I've done this, but is there anyone that's ever been on a listing appointment and you did a lot of work and you feel like you could have closed it, but then you went and opened up the work that you did? Right, you did this beautiful listing presentation, you did all the comps and the nice little bound brochure. You go out there, you pull that up, and then all of a sudden you just open up the door for more questions. You're like, why did I do that? I can't be the only one that's done that, am I? Maybe I am. Mr. Garver has done that as well. So that's part of being the authority and having clear processes. When we get hired, are they buying marketing, or are they buying a system, or are they buying a process? What do you think?
A system, process.
Yeah, they're buying the process and how we get to the outcome that we need to get.
Hey, Rob,
Go ahead.
this is just dialogue, but I like to use the word strategy. If I'm sitting in front of you and I'm going to say, Rob, let's talk about the strategy of marketing the home. People seem to be engaged. They like that word a lot better. If you explain a process to me, you kind of, and I'm just using my own personality, I'm already zoned out because I don't really care what the process is. But if you say to me, let's talk strategy, boom, now I'm locked in because I'm part of the process.
Right. What type of strategic decisions, in your opinion, Bobby, are like the cornerstone of that appointment?
Well, I'll use my words, but it ties into what you've already, discussed with us many times. So your way of saying it is auction pricing versus lottery pricing. I like to say, do you want to be aggressive in the marketplace? Do you want to be competitive? Do you want to test the market? Any strategy, I guess, is okay, but let me tell you the pros and the cons of each. If you price it aggressively, you create the market. More people are going to come to the door. Chances of a bidding war are going to be better. But if you feel that you need to test the market, we could do it. We're going to babysit it a little bit more. We're not going to let it run out 3-4 weeks from now. But if you want to test the market, maybe we try that, see how it works, and we make adjustments as we go along.
Very, very good. That proves that kind of the same concept with different words can still work. And I think it's more important that that you feel comfortable with the language that you use.
And it's also, Rob, I hate to interrupt, but it's also, you are probably an analytical, and I'm not sure, I can't see his name, but B. Golden, maybe he's a little bit of a driver, expressive, so he likes those words, quick words, and it's more important, definitely, like the language we use, that we have to be comfortable, but it's also, we have to understand who we are presenting or having a conversation with. So with Rob, I would say maybe a process or system. But with B. Golden, I would maybe say, a strategy, because he likes those type of words. That's how he likes to be spoken with because of his personality.
You got to know your audience.
Yep. So
Also, Rob, can I inject something?
absolutely.
I've oftentimes, over the 22 years I'm doing this, 24 years, whatever it is, at the end of the presentation, when it seems like they're in total agreement with everything, and then they go, we just want to think it over. And I've often closed with, what can I do? What do you need me to do for you to sign this listing agreement today? And sometimes that works, and they'll go, and I'll do whatever, I'll tweak whatever adjustments they think need tweaking. But I find oftentimes if they say, well, we just want to think it over, then I've kind of lost that listing for some reason.
And Terry, why do you think they might say we need to think it over?
They're seeing other people, other agents. I mean, they seem to be in agreement with what the price we've decided to list it at, the commission, how I'm going to be there at all the showings and the appraisals and all the rest of it. Sounds really, really good. Okay, sign here, press hard, 3 copies. Well, we're going to think it over.
And Terry, I assume that you've had circumstances, probably the majority, where they do sign the first time you meet with them, and then there are other ones where they do we need to think it over, and those think it overs probably, if you're like most of us, don't ultimately wind up being a positive outcome for us, do they?
No, actually.
And
we have such great rapport. I mean, we're having coffee and cake and talking and laughing and joking and okay, you know. I mean, that's happened recently, so that's why I'm a little shook up by that process.
We'll say you're slightly jaded. Is that fair?
Jaded in what way?
From the fact that you thought you had a listing, the conversation was going well, and then it didn't happen, right? I
wouldn't call it jaded. I'd say I'm very pissed, not jaded.
All right, that's Southeast Florida language.
Yay! No, Long Island, really.
But Terry, sometimes I speak, but for me, for instance, I never make a decision right there. If something's very important, I need to think about it. I need to talk about it with my husband. Even if it's the best presentation and I want to go with that person, I will not make the decision right away.
That's ridiculous, Lisa.
No, but that's how I am. So maybe, because of the personality.
No. So this is interesting. This is where these meetings get interesting. So
Finally.
I'm gonna make a comment, and Lisa, you're gonna have to think about this one, because sometimes what we do is our own beliefs. We subliminally put out this vibe, like I would make a decision that first day, I need to think about it. You might put that vibe out unknowingly to your client, where they don't feel comfortable making a decision because that's the way that you would behave. Okay. And for example, in terms of pricing strategy, if you haven't done all the homework and you don't buy into the process that you're discussing, it's going to be hard to convince somebody else that that's the right move for them to do. And I'm a huge Lisa fan, right? But I want to just mention that sometimes, if you believe that you wouldn't want to make a decision like that yourself at the first meeting, Lisa, then you're putting that out in the universe when you go on an appointment. And Terry, would you agree with that, at least slightly?
For sure. I'm so shocked when they need time to think it over. What is left to think about?
Well, that's the thing, Terry, because an objection is often a question that's like left unanswered in the mind of a prospect. So what I've been doing as of late, before I go into the close to sign the listing appointment, the listing contract, excuse me, I go through I isolate all the objections. So then I would go back to price, I would go back to commission, I would go back to marketing, and then I would finish off with, well, John, do you feel I can actually sell your home?
There was no objection. We were in agreement with the selling price, with everything, the commission. I mean, they didn't have an objection to, oh no, that you're asking too much commission. Don't you think we should price it higher? We were in agreement with everything. Now it's 2 weeks. I haven't heard back. They haven't listed with anyone else. I keep calling. I'm not getting an answer. I text, I call, I joke around, whatever.
All right. So Wilson, I'm coming back to you. I didn't ignore you, but Terry, I'm gonna put this question out to the group, and just one at a time answer this. But here would be my suggestion. There is, I would say, I know you want to have some time to think about it. What we can do is we can start to work on getting your property ready to go on the market. We'll do a waiver of broker cooperation. And let's just say that the property is between 900 and 950. I'll say during this exclusive period, we're going to sign the paperwork at 5 million, because we're going to set the ultimate price right before we launch it. But, it seems like we're in agreement that we want to work together and we just need to determine the final price and the launch date. That would be my suggestion. Anybody else have any comments on that?
They were not signing anything that day.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to give
Maybe
you an
it's like
extra
a
tool.
timing thing. Like
I'm giving you an extra tool in your toolbox, and I'm
Right.
not saying it's always going to work.
I get
But
it.
has any now? And this goes back to also at least once a month I hear this story about I was helping a client or a referral, and we got the property ready to go, and the next door neighbor knocked on the door, gave them an offer, and now they're not listing it. If you've had that experience where you thought you had a listing in the bag, you were trying to get them pre-ready to go, and then they sell it to a neighbor or a relative or whomever, raise your hand if that's happened to you.
Oh,
Look at that. A lot of amazing, wickedly smart people have had that happen to them. So I think the process would be, and Terry, I'm not saying it's going to work every time, but another way to get it going is, look, if you want to have some time to think about it, let's prepare to get it on the market. If you want to cancel it during this period, you just give me a written notice, we'll cancel it if you had to go to that point. But at least you get a signature, you get their emotional buy-in to the process. It's another tool in your arsenal. And if you have one that you think is in the bag and you're very comfortable and it's not ready to go on now because they need to do 1, 2, or 3 things, please, document it and get it in writing, do a listing agreement, get the waiver of broker cooperation until you launch it, because that's practicing safe real estate, because you're giving them all the advice now. If a neighbor comes and says, hey, you know what, I see that you have some contractors here. Are you getting ready to move? They're like, yeah, call my agent, Terry. She can help you out with it, right?
Right.
Because we just had one in New Jersey where the person undersold it to a neighbor, but once he or she was going back to them trying to explain that, we just sounded like we were
Sour
begging
grapes.
for a commission.
Sour grapes, right?
Yep. So please, does anybody practice that, where if the property's not ready for a month, you get a listing agreement signed and a waiver of broker cooperation during that period? If you do that, raise your hand. All right. If you don't do that, I would suggest that should be the one thing from today, is when you have somebody that says that they're going to be working with you and you tell them to do these little repairs or to get it ready, sign the listing, put a 1-year expiration, put a ridiculous price on it, and say, once it's ready to go on the market, we're going to reevaluate whether there's a high sale, a low sale, more competition, less competition, right? Because if something's going on in 3 weeks, a lot can happen, right? And it's not that necessarily the market value is going to change that much by an appraiser's perspective. But if 3 new listings come on in the neighborhood, is that not going to impact the way that you position it? And if the 3 listings that are on the market happen to sell, that will impact you in a positive way, right? So
Hey,
anyway,
Rob.
let's
No, I
have
was
those
just gonna,
conversations. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, I was trained that I take all of my listings that way. Every single listing, in my opinion, needs more than 24 hours or 48 hours to be ready for sale. So whether it's going on the market a week, 2 weeks, that's how I was trained to take every single listing with the waiver of broker cooperation and you have a prep time. So it's just the way I do it.
And Bobby Golden, have you ever done that?
No, that's why I put it in the chat. I haven't done that. Our multiple listing allows 2 weeks. That's kind of what I always played with, but I'm going to start doing that 1 month broker cooperation agreement.
However long it takes, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if somebody comes to you now, and they're saying, hey, when my kids get out of school, I want to put it on the market in June. Hey, sign right here now, right? Let's start
every
getting
single one.
Let's start getting the contractors lined up. Right?
Absolutely. That's how I do it.
So there's a big takeaway worth your attendance today. Okay.
Right.
Here's an interesting, a great listing pitch is about listening. Get it?
Mm-hmm.
The listening pitch, because you want to ask questions and listen. Okay. What are some of the questions outside of the price and commission that you find to be some of the most relevant?
You have to put it on the MLS.
Okay.
Do we have to have a sign? I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to know. I want you to be a secret agent.
How long is it gonna take?
How long is it going to take? Anybody else?
Some people overanalyze what they see on TV, and they want to wait to do this, and should I take pictures down, and should I stage this, and I say to them, don't worry about that. You're going to get 10 people in here with 10 different opinions. Just see what the feedback is, and we'll go from there. But I don't waste time on, in my opinion, what's insignificant stuff.
And how about asking a question like, what are 2 or 3 things that I can implement to alleviate some of the stress from the process for you, Mr. Golden? Wouldn't that then identify what their concerns are? Because I think everybody has different concerns, right?
Yep, it's a good approach.
100%. And if you ask that question at the beginning of the conversation, then they actually tell you the secret to getting the listing.
Do you ask that question, Joe, or you're going to ask it now?
Say it again?
You ask that question, or you write that one down?
No, I'm writing it down. I'm going to ask it in my appointment today.
Yeah. So what are 2 or 3 things in the process that I can do to eliminate some of the stress and uncertainty? And I think they're going to give you the keys to getting the listing. No pun intended, right?
I approach it the other way. I start out with, this can be stressful, and I'm here to make it as less stressful as possible. But I never ask them specifically what would that mean to them personally.
Okay.
It's a good angle. It's a good angle.
Yep. Here's another interesting comment. People trust the person that understands them, not the person that talks the most.
That is very true. Talk less.
So unmute yourself if you want to chat.
Rob, can I say something real quick too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I hate to admit that we can actually use something from the cars sales business, and I also hope Dan Gonen's needed.
Here, hold on. I just muted everybody again. So go ahead, Wilson.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
So if you've ever bought a car, when it's overcoming objections, they're some of the best in the world at doing it because their job is to put out cars. At the core of who we are also salespeople. And one of the best things is when they say, I need more time to think about it, you have an opportunity there to ask more questions, but you also have the opportunity to admit, hey, that just means I haven't given you enough information to make the decision today. I understand. This is one of the largest decisions financially, emotionally, and physically that you're going to make. So just out of curiosity, ask those questions of, what would it take for you to sign today? What do you need? What information do you need? What ideas do you need to sign today? And I'm not even asking you to sign today. I would just like to know for future reference. It starts a whole new conversation because when they say, I need time to think about it, they're doing one of 2 things. They're letting you know you didn't give them enough information to sign. And 2, they want the conversation to end. They are trying to stop anything from moving forward at that point. So you need to break. It's almost an icebreaker for you. You've got to get through it and just ask those questions and be honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many clients I sit there and say, you're right, I haven't given you enough information. And I go, okay, well, I'd like to know more about this process, your marketing plan, your social media, whatever it is. And it allows the conversation to continue flowing and we move past the objection.
And Wilson, here's a little hack. When you start out the appointment, hey, when you select the person to represent your home, or when you select the agent to market your property, what are the 2 or 3 most important things? Right? Let them tell you, and then you don't come back as groveling with those things, but you highlight how those are part of our process, right? because
Yeah.
they'll give you the path to their heart, right? They'll tell you what you need to do to get there.
Yeah, I had a really good dentist tell me one day that salespeople and doctors need the same thing. They need to learn how to shut their mouths and listen. It's amazing what people will tell you.
I'm gonna supplement the link to our document here later. So if you want to go back to it, I'm gonna put some phrases that I would be using that you can implement when you have these conversations. So one of the phrases that you might want to use, would it be safe to assume buyers are going to compare? And that's how you go into the marketing. Would you agree that if you were a buyer X, are you familiar with how the days on market inflection point works? It's always going to be a no, and you can identify that. You can talk about a case study without getting personal, right? About somebody who took the wrong strategy. You can have a conversation about their motivation and how we can get a buyer to be motivated to get them the outcome. A mental phrase for us is get out of the telling business, right? And get into the asking business. All the objections are basically in the same bundles, okay? And if we ever get tripped up by them, then we need to know how we run the flywheel to go over those, right? Because people, I'm not going to give my home away. I can wait for the right price, right? I mean, you've seen that body language from some sellers or most sellers, right? And what we do is sometimes we take that literally. Dave Townsend, if somebody says, I'm not going to give my house away, what reaction do you have?
Well, I would say first off, what do you consider giving your house away? Because, typically the buyers in the marketplace are shopping, they're looking at multiple properties. So they're drawing a comparison between different properties. And then once they draw that comparison, they're going to determine your property in competition with those other properties, what the value is. So
you're giving me a very, very logical answer to a very emotionally powered statement. Okay. And would you agree in concept that most sellers would be like, I'm not going to give my house away. I can wait for the right buyer. I can wait it out. I'm not going to sell it in the first day. And that could be a logical belief system, and that could also be a flawed belief system. Could those both be true at the same time, Dave?
Yes.
So when somebody's saying that I'm not going to give my house away, I can wait, what they're really asking us for is to give them the strategy that Bobby Golden was talking about in terms of letting it become their idea on how to get the best possible outcome. And what we need to do is we need to uncorrelate their belief that a higher listing price equates to a higher sales price. Okay, because I think sellers, absent a compelling conversation, they believe that if I can push the asking price higher, I'm going to wind up with a higher selling price. Do you think that's possible unless we break that correlation, right? And it's always within reason, right? So if the house is 600, they say, can we try 675 for a little bit and see if we get lucky? Seems innocent, doesn't it?
And Rob, can I cut in? Sorry.
Absolutely.
But just to use my dialogue in that situation, I would say, Mr. Lazard, you want to list it at 699. Number one, I don't really think it's to your benefit to do that, and it's certainly not anything that I would advise. And here's why. Boom, boom, boom. But sir, you know what? If you want to try it at that, we could try it for a short amount of time. And if it works out in your favor, then you made the right decision. But if it doesn't work out, you already know that I did not advise that you move forward with that, or I advised against it. And now we could take a different strategy. And it reels them right back in. It really does.
So if you're Bobby Golden with like Top Share and Woodbridge, that story works. But I'm gonna put our friendship at risk here, Bobby, and say if you can, with all your years of experience, if you can shift that a little bit to ask them questions to get them to the same outcome, you will find that to be an easier process. And what I mean by that, instead of you saying I don't recommend, right? If you say, hey, Bobby, what would happen if we did this and we didn't get any offers, right? And then you can walk them into the outcome instead of saying I don't recommend. That's just a observation on my part, and maybe something that you might want to experiment with.
I just came back from R4. I'm going to try anything at this point because all the ideas are great.
It's also a really good, Rob, because oftentimes the prospect, they don't believe what we tell them, but they often believe what they tell themselves. So if you get them to come to the conclusion, like by them verbalizing that overpricing is bad and days on market is a consequence, then it would be it would be easier because they're telling themselves that because they're verbalizing it.
So yeah, so that falls into this statement that I borrowed from somebody, Joe. It's not my own, but buyers and sellers don't argue with their own words, right? So what you basically said is if you can ask the question so they can tell you that's the right thing to do, then that's what works. Yeah, so Serby says, I think Rob tries to show the sellers how to come to the conclusion. I mean, yeah, basically, I don't want to run through the wall if I can walk around it, right? Like there's an easier way to get to the outcome that you want. I've observed that sellers have a belief that within reason, if I ask more, that I get more. Like if I'm going to get 95% of my asking price, I'm going to ask 10% more, I'll get 95% of that. They don't understand the consequences of introducing it and launching it at the right price. And I believe, and Bobby, I admire what you've done, Mr. Award-winning team leader, market share person, but there's always opportunities to improve. And as a pinnacle team leader, you still made the investment to go out to R4 with an open mind, and I think that's why you become as successful as you are, right? Because you're open to changing these concepts.
Here's my point of view on this, and you're 100% correct, Rob. I don't take anything personally. It's constructive criticism, but the suggestion that you just gave me, in my approach here is that I'm going to maintain my business, and what you just told me is going to give me 3, 4, maybe 5 additional deals. It's going to add on to my business, so it's very helpful. I really appreciate it.
And Bobby, as a team leader, you can also pay it forward and improve your skills by sharing that with everyone in your team that's not on this call.
Correct.
So, but the sellers are all the same, and our job is not to tell them; it's to get them to tell us what the right process is, right? And have these conversations, and always put it in their perspective. Like the 10-10-0 rule. Who knows what that is? I'm going to keep saying it until everybody memorizes it, or if you don't want to memorize it, that's fine as well. But who knows what the 10-10-0 rule is?
I do. It's 10 days without showings. You have to reduce the price around 3%. 10 days with no offers, around 5%. No, the opposite.
You have it backwards on the price.
Yeah, the opposite. Sorry.
But Lisa, and this is just my opinion, but if you say to them, can you tell me if you were role playing with a seller and you were going to introduce that concept? Can you just role play that with me for a moment?
Yes, I'd like you to write something down, please.
Okay.
So just write 10-10-0.
Wrote it down. What does that mean, Lisa?
What does that mean? Yes. So it means that if we introduce your property on the market and 10 days have gone by and we have no showings, it means we have to improve the price. It means it's overpriced by about 5%. If we have 10 days with no offers, showings but no offers, then it means that we have overpriced your property and we need to reduce the price.
So I want to give Lisa a silent round of applause here, and I want to give you a couple of fine points, Lisa. That again, I hope you still love me as much after I give you the criticism.
Yes, go ahead.
The most important thing is to say, write this down 10-10-0, and we have, my team or my office or my company has this rule to protect the equity in your home. If you forget that part, it cuts it down by 80 to 90% of the value. Okay. And it would be, Brian, we do this we have a 10-10-0 rule to protect the equity in your home and to avoid buyers from getting an unfair advantage. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Brian knew about. So Brian, the way that this process works is if we have 10 days with no showings, it means that the market's telling us that we need to reposition the house. And statistically, that's a 5 to 7% repositioning. Can you write that down? And then Brian, if we have 10 showings, but nobody's been compelled to make an offer, means that your property is attractive to get showings, but not compelling to get an offer. That's a lesser problem. That means we need to reposition it 3 to 5%. Okay. And I don't remember the language that you used, Lisa, but I think you said reduce the price, right? And I think reduce
it should be
the price.
Reposition. Yes, that sounds.
I think reduce the price is something that's like a fighting language, but repositioning it's more comfortable.
Absolutely,
okay?
Yes.
And the most important thing is to make it about them, and it's Brian to protect the equity in your home and to avoid giving buyers an advantage. This is how that rule works, right? Notice it's all about them. And Lisa and I have had the benefit of, we actually went out door knocking together once. And do you remember that one slip you made and how it went?
Yes, of course I do. I'll never forget that.
All right. Share it with the audience.
Well, I made them. It was very early days my career. We went door knocking, and I mistakenly said to the lady that opened the door, I think I mentioned something about selling. Do you know anyone that's looking to sell or buy in the community? Instead of saying, "Is anybody that needs help?"
Yeah.
Yes. And she basically was about to slam the door.
Yeah, but other than that one outlier, wasn't it a beautiful, successful day? And it was just like, that was designed to teach you of how words matter.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And the way that, if you, there's a few massively good nuggets here, like never leave an appointment without a waiver of broker cooperation and a signed listing. Make the price ridiculous. Always use the lens of how it benefits them, right? Ask them, what are some stressful things that we can alleviate or minimize from the process. Let them tell you, right? Stop telling and start asking questions. Get out of the telling business. We have the 10-10-0 rule, which the most important thing to remember there is, in order to protect the equity in your home, we've instituted a 10-10-0 rule. Can you write this down? And then when they write that down, they'll remember it, right? Because I've worked with many on this call here, and on day 11, when I call up with the agent and I say, hey, we've hit the 11-day mark, and they're like, I remember, we need to reposition it, right? Makes that conversation super easy. Okay. And, all buyers and all sellers and buyers are the same. They're different ages. They're different stages of life. They're different people, but they're all the same, right? They deserve to be looked at through the lens, maybe a few minor, you might have an uber analytical, you might have a super emotional person, but if you apply the process, it virtually works every single time. Okay. And it's about It's about how we engage. It's not about this buyer is unreasonable. Okay. It's about listening. What matters most to you about the move. Here, I'm going to give you a couple other nuggets here. And I want to quote them correctly.
Rob, can I pop a question before you go into the next one? It's
Absolutely.
Michael. Yeah. So let's say you present this 10-10-0 explanation to a client and the response is, okay, but how does not following that rule give the buyers an advantage? How would you respond to that?
How does not, Michael, what I want to do is I want to show you how other properties in the community, how they've ultimately sold once we build up days on the market. Okay, so if you don't reposition it quickly, here's 3 examples of sellers that tried to hold the line a longer period of time. And here's how long it took to get it sold. And here's the list to sale price. Here's the price per square foot. Like, you can give them different data points to show them how that impacts the outcome negatively. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So here's something that kind of goes back into that. Knowledge is confidence, right? And this is what I talk about. Sometimes we prepare and we do the nice glossy listing book, right? But we never open it up and give it to them because we don't need to. Knowledge is confidence. Is everybody with me on that? Yes. Confidence is trust. Right? When you're confident, not arrogant, does that build trust? Right? And trust is a sale. If they trust you, they're going to follow you, right? So just think about it. Knowledge is confidence, confidence is trust, and trust becomes a sale. All right. And this is where we get tripped up with a friend of ours didn't list with us, or did you ever? I'm sure everybody's had that circumstance where a friend, a neighbor, somebody that you thought was a layup, right? Maybe your best friend, maybe your best friend's sister, maybe somebody in your neighborhood that's friendly with your kids that you've known for 20 years, and you didn't get it. Has anybody had that experience? So Bobby, I'm gonna give you my psychology pitch on this one here. Are you back unmuted?
I'm on, yeah.
So what I believe happens there is when we have a familiar relationship, right? We have a really close friend. They look at us as their friend, but we feel so comfortable that we don't build the trust that is formed from the knowledge and the confidence that we have, right? So we might skip steps because we're comfortable, and then either they feel that we skip steps, or they may know us. You know, we may go fishing together. We may go to a baseball game together, Bobby, but they don't know your resume of selling real estate. You might feel awkward talking about it, right? Because it's your best friend. But that's how that happens, in my opinion, right? We skip a step because we're comfortable with them. And I think that we need to have a conversation and, put the same process of asking questions on, right? Because that will help us identify whether or not there is a vulnerability for us, right? Because I don't know that there's anybody that's been in the business for 5 years and doing, average Remax business, 10, 12, 15 sales a year that hasn't had that happen to them. Is there anyone that's been in the business for more than 5 years and done more than 12 deals a year that hasn't had that happen to them? I'm going to guess not, because we feel comfortable and we skip steps. And if we just change the narrative and we follow the process, ask the right questions, right, identify what objections might come up, I think we'll have a better outcome of avoiding those friends, families, social network people, that sphere of influence people that ultimately don't list with us. They'll list with you, but don't take your advice of price reduction, staging, etc. Sandy, are you able, is that an observation from your experience or?
Yeah, they feel obligated to list with you because you're related. But then they feel so comfortable with you that they're used to, you tell them something, they're like, oh, I don't believe that. Okay, well, that's how sisters are. But you've got to change the relationship to, well, in this case, I'm not the sister, I'm the listing agent. I come with experience and knowledge, and you should
Right.
trust me on this.
So, Sandy, if you ask better questions, even if it's a family relationship, right? Number one, what's going to happen is you're going to set the stage for how the process works, right? Because if your sister just lists with you and says, "Hey, I trust you, whatever I need to do," and they sign the paperwork, well, they might be confused in the process, right? And if they get an offer early on, they're like, "Oh, I think we underpriced it," right? So if we skip steps,
Right.
number one is you would feel really awkward talking about how good you are to your sister or one of your best friends. But I think it's more comfortable to ask questions about the process. Say, hey, I know we're going to be working together here, but I want to ask you a question of how you want to be served and, how much communication do you want, right? And that will give you the information to take better care of them, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know,
And
Zeke, go ahead, Sandy.
And also, you've got the listing consultation package, you've got the comps. So it's you and them analyzing the data, the listing consultations showing you the effects of overpricing. It's showing you the effects of not being on the, in the market and getting showings the first week, having to price reduce. So you can use that third party authority also.
So, and I have one thing I'm going to put an exclamation point on that, Sandy, but I want to see, Zeke, did you have something to say before? It looked like you wanted to say something before I wrap up. All right. I'm going to.
No, I'm just listening.
All right. So here's my exclamation point at the end is you can do a great job, get them the best price. Okay. But that's not the best possible outcome. The best possible outcome is if they understand the process and they recognize the value, that's going to be a more referable and repeatable business. Does that make sense? Right? Because you can do a great job, but if they don't know that it was a great job, it's kind of like if you hit a hole in one and nobody saw it, did you really hit a hole in one? The tree falls in the forest, and all those stories about it doesn't really matter. And I think you need to set the expectation by asking better questions, right? So that's the takeaway. And then for those of you who are late, I put something in the link and on the page if you want free money and if you want to do traveling. I think tomorrow's the last day to do it. It's a Rakuten. Does anybody ever use Rakuten, by the way? Okay, Rob Golden, what do you use it for? I mean, Bobby, Mr. Garver, not Golden.
How do you spell that?
I'll put it in the link. It's
Oh,
weird.
okay.
It's
Thank you.
Rakuten. Good.
I
Mr.
use it for
Garver.
all of my online shopping. They have a thing that you can put on your search bar so that anytime you go to a site that they are affiliated with, they'll automatically notify you that you can get money back using a Rakuten on this website. And quarterly, they send you a check for the money you get back.
And I actually have it linked up to my American Express card, so it kind of becomes American Express points, and I get, free travel and hotels, being that I'm a frequent traveler, and it's really something that has no downside. So I'm not a multi-marketing salesperson, but you should all sign up. If you do the link, you get $50 just for doing your first purchase at $50.
Nice.
So it's free money, and one of these days I'm gonna do a one-off session and just share with you all the things I've learned about travel hacking, because in in August, I'm taking the family on a trip to Japan, and I got $350 tickets in Premium Plus on Japan Airlines through travel hacking, and it's pretty cool. It's almost like I can't not do it. So that's just my my one tip if you want to go and do that. And
Thanks for sharing.
I hope that you take one or two things that you can use from today's session, and you know, serve your clients better, have a better outcome, and most importantly, have them realize that you've done it to help them, not to make the sale easier for us. All right,
Rob, one last thing.
Yep.
Rob, if the real estate thing doesn't work out for you, you could open up with our travel agency. You'd be fine. You'd work out great.
Well, you know my passion, Bobby, is I'm gonna die selling real estate and helping people figure out a better way. So that's what I love. But hey, have a great one. Next Friday is the St. Louis Keys at 33. Is that at 10 or 11, Sandy?
11 Central.
11 Central time.
Right
over
after
in-
the mastermind.
Yep, over in St. Louis. And then I'm going to be going to your offices in St. Louis for like a kind of like a coffee with the broker. Ask me anything, sharing you some nuggets. Bring me your problems. If you have any listings you want me to go on, door knocking on Saturday. If anybody's brave, I hope it's snowing and freezing. People will open the door and give us hot chocolate. You watch. And then Sunday, if you're doing an open house, I might be a visitor for you. So I'm really looking forward to my trip to St. Louis. And everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.